Welcome back to the Spirit of Truth. Also joining us today is Fred Harris, and we're really lucky that he came along as well into Colorado. Fred, welcome, man. It's awesome to see you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So I know that we just talked to Byron. He was talking about this project that you guys have been part of, and you're kind of doing the tour, seeing if you can get some support and stuff like that. Can you kind of maybe help us out as far as maybe the history of this project and how you've been instrumentally involved with it?
Well, first of all, I first heard about this project from Robert Sarmast. I heard him give a speech, and I really was intrigued by the concept of locating the Garden of Eden, and also that it could be Atlantis as well, because as Byron was saying, Atlantis is a pop culture thing that would bring attention to it. Mm. So why would somebody interested in the URANTIA book want to participate in this kind of project? First of all, it's an expedition. It's fun. It's going to be exciting. And, you know, we're on this planet a short time, so I want to do some fun stuff. I'm also a lawyer, so I was assisting in the legal aspects of the first, second, and now the third expeditions. So what would that be? So first of all, you have a vision, you have a visionary, and he has an overall 30,000 foot idea of how this is going to happen. You don't have a budget, you don't know what it's going to cost or who to talk to. So there has to be a plan put together, a concrete plan. I'm pretty much into how to make deals happen. So I'm a mergers and acquisitions lawyer. I try and have deals papered so that everybody's intentions are properly memorialized. All right.
Okay.
That's what M&A lawyers do. In this case, I knew we would need funds to even try it. So the first thing we did was we put together a group of people who were similarly interested. Captain Bates was one of them. There was an international URANTIA book conference here in Colorado, and we rented out the hotel that The Shining was shot in, actually.
Oh, yeah.
And we just rented out a room, and we put out a notice to the conference. We were going to have a meeting there about the expedition to Garden of Eden in Atlantis. Room was packed. Everybody was sitting up at this table. The team was sitting up there. Robert Bates had his, Captain Bates had his Coast Guard uniform on and his hat and all that. He looked very official. And we kind of went down the line and just talked about what everybody's role was in this. And Robert talked about his vision. I put together a limited partnership or a limited liability company. We offered people an opportunity to invest in the project, telling them that you will never get your money back. This is going to be a loser, but this is for the good of it. And you never know, you might do something. We had a book out that Robert had written. I think, Byron, did you publish it? I think Byron published it. So that was the start of it. Quite a few people contributed to it. Ultimately, this is another great thing about these expeditions, which is relationships have eternal value. And when you're in a expedition with people, you develop relationships that you'll probably always have throughout this, life and thereafter. So there's that aspect to having a shared vision. A community develops around it. And little synchronicities were happening that we felt like were telling us that, there was some celestial assistance going on here.
Really?
So, yeah. So Robert was actually in Boulder and ran into a company that had all of these underwater maps of the region we were going to. They were like an oil and gas drilling company.
Just randomly?
I can't remember.
Fortunately?
Yes, fortunately. Synchronicities were abounding. And this was where we first got a view of the bottom. But it was very vague, it wasn't, they weren't shooting it in the kind of detail we needed. And they were also looking for oil at the time. So it was, but it gave us certain parameters where it showed us where topography was and that sort of thing. So we started building the plan.
Okay.
Captain Bates was going to be the captain of the ship, and he was. We had other people coming. A lot of people flew out there. Everybody was on their own, paying for their own way. Mark Greer, who's a friend of ours from Salt Lake City, was there with video cameras and stuff, doing a lot of videoing. And there were, people writing articles about it and that sort of thing. And ultimately, and I was at home. I didn't get to go because I had to negotiate some of the contracts and I had to be in my office to, get the contracts back and forth. And we put together releases for the crew and releases for anybody who's going to be on the film so that, we could use their image and that sort of thing. Okay. It was very underfunded, but we got some interesting information and we decided, wow, this is what we think we're onto something. Oh, okay. Wow. So in the first one, it was decided not to use any URANTIA book references. And to call it the Atlantis. We didn't use Eden, we just said Atlantis. Okay. The concept was, in order to actually engage the public and spur their interest and tweak their, their excitement on this, that we would do it in a way that was most acceptable to the most people. Right. Right. And as Byron said, the Plato stuff is not controversial at all, and everybody knows about it. And there were so many matches to it that we felt like we could go with that instead of using any URANTIA reference. We came back and started to think about the second expedition, because we really wanted to do a better one this time. So, excuse me, I can't remember how we ran into this guy who was a producer. He had a production company. But when we were talking to him on the phone, he mentioned that he knew one of my partners. Huh. The law firm I'm in is an international law firm. We've got thousands of lawyers. And so after we got off the phone, I called this guy, still my partner, and said, what do you know about this guy? And he told me that he thought he could pull the deal off. He said he's got the chops to do it. Okay. So we talked him into, and he talked us into going into a deal. We weren't really going to make any money on it, but that wasn't really our purpose anyway. We were trying to get the story out. Right. So he hooked us up with the History Channel. Awesome. And so you pulled the History Channel deal. Got the History Channel deal. That's a big deal. Cool. Yeah. And so unfortunately, and this goes to the question of who controls the narrative and who controls the actual expedition itself. Because Robert Sarmast basically took over as the captain of the ship when, Captain Bates probably should have been there. Neither one of them could have changed what happened, however. A lot of times things happen for a reason. Okay, so we went out there. The History Channel had all their team there, had all their on-camera people there. But they didn't have a crew for the ship that was experienced in dropping a side scan sonar. So I'm going to give you an example of what happened. If you've ever been fishing and you're throwing out the line and you don't put your thumb on the reel, sometimes it will overspin and it will get all of the line all tangled up. Anybody who's fished knows what I'm talking about. Well, that's what happened. It got all tangled up as a result of them not releasing it properly and not keeping enough tautness on it. And so it didn't go down very far until then they had to pull it back out, and they'd only leased the ship for a certain small period of time. So, and then the software quit working. Oh, wow. So all of these things conspired against us to really frustrate the second expedition. Okay. So we got some information out of it. There was a show that was put together It was on TV and all that. But
Finding Atlantis or something like that.
yeah, but it was the ending was bad because we didn't have an ending.
Right.
If you ever see it, you'll notice that it's just kind of peters out at the end. And
Right.
so we're back to probably 10 years later.
Okay.
Pretty much everybody's forgotten about it except for Captain Bates.
Yeah.
Now he wants to do it again. He's got new theories. I think he feels like I should have been in there on the second one. I don't think it would have mattered, but I think I can make this happen. We now have a lot of benefits from 10 years. So the side scan sonar we were using, that allows you to penetrate the surface of the bottom of the ocean. At the time when we could penetrate about 30 feet.
Okay.
Now, I don't know how much sediment has been there since, Eden dropped, but a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine.
You can now use the new technology and go down to 90 feet. So we should be able to get a much better view of what's under all the silt.
Okay.
And also, as we've had people, we actually had a person offer us a submarine to go down there.
Oh, wow.
But they died before we could get the submarine from them.
No way.
Yeah. And you can also do core borings, you can just send down borings and find out what's down there.
Right.
So there's a lot of ways to approach it. Also, if we do it this time, we're going to want to do it for an extended, not just a couple of days. They had rented it for 2 or 3 days. So we'd like a couple of weeks.
Wow.
Because not only do you want to target where we think the Temple Mound is, but there are other described features, walls and stuff like that, that we believe would still be there in other places. So we'd like to have a couple of weeks where we could go back and forth across the area, crisscross it, and get a very good view of what's really there.
Yeah, nice and thorough.
So since then also, there's been a huge revolution in the television and entertainment industry. So today, which is 2019, in case this lasts longer than a year, the entertainment industry is in a huge uproar, thanks to Netflix and others that are doing direct-to-consumer streaming. Okay. Used to be you would have a cable company, you would have to buy a bundled package of 200 channels. You watch 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 of them, and the other 190 you would never look at, but you're paying for them. And nobody likes that.
Right.
So now it's more a la carte. So all the cable companies realize that they're going out of business if they don't get on board. So now we have Netflix started it. Last year, for original programming, they spent between $13 and $14 billion. Now you've got Amazon, and you've got Hulu, and you've got Apple coming out, and you got Google, and you got Disney, and you got all these different companies that are jumping into the streaming business. Now, what do they need?
Content.
Original content. That's what they need. It's my opinion that we should be able to negotiate a contract with one of these guys that will let us retain our ability to script it, because we want to keep the narrative and maybe build it into a 5, 6, 7, shows for a series, which is going to be cheap for them because they're spending. Like for Game of Thrones, every one of those was like millions of dollars, okay, for one show. You could do this whole thing for probably $5 or $10 million. And I think that's something that we will be able to pitch. I've already got people who are looking into production companies and that sort of thing. We're waiting for the book to come out. We've got to do some budgeting. We've got to do some thinking about how this would roll out and the chronology of it and that sort of thing. But I am hopeful that we'll be able to use this new paradigm in entertainment to our advantage.
Yeah. Good timing.
Good timing. So maybe all things work for the best in the fullness of time.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of, and my job is to, if we need to raise money, I'll put together the offering documents and we'll, do that sort of thing. We prefer to have OPM, other people's money, do it.
Don't we all?
Yeah. So, because here's the thing, we're not really in this for the money. We're in this because we think it's fun and it will validate a lot of what the URANTIA book says, which will give it credibility in some people's eyes. Some people won't care, but it's just another link to show that, wait a minute, this book had all this down. There's no way they could have, known this otherwise. And if that was true, maybe other things in the book are true, or at least maybe we should look at it.
Yeah,
so
I feel the same way.
If you have any questions on that, fine. And if not, I've got another thing I want to talk about.
Well, I'd like to change the direction too. And hopefully you're feeling the same way as this. You've been a man of action for a long time. And I know a lot of the youth look up to you because a lot of the service that you've done for them in your involvement with the TruthSeekers. And I was just wondering if maybe you wanted to just talk about that.
I do.
Okay, cool.
I want to talk about the TruthSeekers.
Yeah.
So the first thing about TruthSeekers is what is true. Anybody who knows anything about this generation knows they're not big readers, by and large. There's a lot of video out there. People learn in different ways. The URANTIA book itself says you need to represent the truth to every generation in a language that they can understand. Okay. So if I was God and I was trying to get a message out to the people of a planet, what would be 2 or 3 things that I would be looking for in how to do that? And this is the way I see it. Number 1, the message has got to be universal. It's got to apply to everybody. And number 2, it's got to be simple. One problem with the URANTIA book is that it's very technical and very detailed. A lot of people like that. That's great. But if you remember, Jesus was pretty simple in his message. So there's 2 rules. Love God and love each other. Mm-hmm. Everything else is going to go from there. So I have to figure out how to engage the youth. Now, I'm not a young guy anymore, but I still like to think that I, have an attitude of youth.
You're pretty young at heart, man.
Yeah. So I am looking for universal truth. Okay. And I define this as a statement I can make to you, which is simple, but you will recognize is true. And I don't care who you are, what station of life you're at, whether you're rich or poor, nothing. If I tell you this, you are going to think, I recognize that as truth. And that's how I want to start with the kids. And I'm working up a program for the next IC, which is coming up in a year, about truth. So I'll give you an example. You tell me if this sounds real or not. It's always something.
Well, it's up to interpretation for
It's
personal.
always something in your life. Something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. I've not found anybody who hasn't experienced that. You think things are going great? Something's going to happen. It's always something. Think things are bad? It's always something. Something's going to happen. So why is that? How does that relate to a URANTIA message? Well, what a lot of people don't realize, especially Christians and others who believe that it's, at the end of this life, you're either going to heaven or hell, and that's it. Boom, done.
Right.
The URANTIA book says that this is an educational sphere. Mm-hmm. And we're learning how to become more spiritual, less material, more loving, okay? You can't really learn stuff unless you have to face issues. You have to make decisions. One of the things you got to be careful for is asking your angels to involve themselves in your life, because they will put you in situations that are extremely difficult for you to make hard decisions.
Yeah.
Because that's what they care about. They don't care about the rest of this stuff. I mean, it's nothing to them. They want you to grow.
Yeah.
And so excruciating moral decisions, that's their thing, man. They're dangerous beings. Stay away from them. They'll cause you trouble. But so you can take a simple message, which I treat kind of like a parable. So if it's a universal truth and these kids can recognize it and say, yes, I know that's true, I've experienced it, then I can fill it in with, okay, that's how you are learning to grow.
Okay.
And so I'm going to try and communicate with the next group of truth seekers, which are roughly ages 13, 14 to 19.
Cool.
And this is what everybody should be doing in their lives. Not only, the other thing is, the URANTIA book says, listen, if you have to go to somebody and pitch your message to them, then you're already a failure.
Yeah.
It's the extent to which you have to go to them that shows you the depth of your failure. They need to be coming to you and saying, you know what? I don't know what you have, but I want to hear about it because I can see it in your life. And if you don't have that, you can know how many angels dancing on the head of a pin. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Irrelevant.
Right.
Okay. It's all about loving service. It's all about that. So my whole thing is the next generation has got to be, this truth has to be explained to the next generation in a way they can understand it.
Mm.
And that's what Truth Seekers is about. I'm not here to tell you what truth is. I'm here to lead you to find your own truth. And I want you to do it in a way that is thoughtful, contemplative. I want you to think about it. I want you to not just walk through life in a, fog.
Yeah. Yeah.
Reflect.
Yeah, I can connect with that. That's kind of the intention of this show too, calling the spirit of truth and not really pretending to dictate truth, but just allowing for truth to be invited into this conversation and letting it grow with all of us in our sincerity, I feel like. And that's something that you're taking to an applied state you guys go out in the wilderness and stuff.
Yes,
too,
we do.
right?
Because we think that you need to get away from distractions to be able to focus, So if we leave the kids on campus for a conference, then they're interacting with their parents and their brothers and sisters, and they're going to get ice cream and they're not paying attention. So we'll take them out camping or we'll put them in cottages outside. And then the other thing we want to build is community, because community is about relationship. I already told you relationship is an eternal value. Relationship is so valuable. It's everything that you own in a physical sense here on this planet, you don't take with you. Relationships, you do. Experiences, you do. And so in order to break this down into as simple as possible for people to understand, my view is the URANTIA book has to be lived. You may be the only URANTIA book anybody ever reads.
I like that.
Just by meeting you, just by seeing how, and if it doesn't change you that way, then you really don't, it hasn't really done much for you. You may know it, but it hasn't changed your life.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of like that with Jesus too, a little bit.
That's right. He did it as he passed by. And people were affected. His apostles didn't have any idea what he was talking about half the time, but they liked him because he was a friend to them. He loved them. He served them.
Yeah, he's a friend.
But, basically they were walking around clueless, which probably explains how some of the stories got mixed up,
Yeah, exactly.
Not to mention they wouldn't let him write anything down for a while.
Yeah, he didn't leave anything written.
So anyway, that's what I want to talk about. Truth seekers. Everybody's a truth seeker. But I want everybody to reflect on their lives and think about what's important in life and then elevate it and then demonstrate it in your life.
Amen.
All right.
Cool. Well, thanks, Fred. It's always a pleasure to hang out with you, man. Come back anytime. Really appreciate it. Thanks for coming by.
Absolutely. Thanks.
All right.
See ya.
Thanks, you guys. And stay tuned for more Spirit of Truth.